Werewolves, a human with the ability to transform into a wolf-like beast. They became werewolves either due to a curse laid upon them, afflicted, often a bite from another werewolf, or chosen and achieved through magic. When one becomes a werewolf through magic, the person in question is more aware in the wolf form. The first time I heard about them was from a storyteller on either Celtic or historical festival. I must have been about 47 years old and is one of many stories that stuck to me, even though I can't really remember the story in particular. For those that do not know, I have a werewolf character. Her name is Starlight, which I have a fursuit for with two different heads. One is more feral looking, adored with earrings with crystals and small charms. The other one with a more gentler smile and eyes full of life. So I started thinking, how would she look like in a human form, and started to sketch up an idea for a repaint. For the base of this project I used this second-hand Monster High Claudine wolf doll. After cleaning up the doll, I start with removing the factory paint except for the lipstick and teeth, then cut out the eyes with an X-Acto knife and dyed her hair black. After masking off her hair with some scrap of fabric, I started painting her skin a lighter skin tone, somewhat similar to my own. The first layer looked absolutely horrendous. The paint I'm using for this is an Almogen Ferry in number 5. It works on almost all materials and dries rather quickly. After 4 to 5 coats, it's completely opaque. When the paint job is done, it's time to prep the surface with Mr. Super Clear Sealant. It was my first time using it and it gives a really nice surface to work on with watercolor pencils. When using this stuff, you want to do it in a well-ventilated area and wear a mask. You don't want to breathe in this stuff. Then let it dry for 15 to 30 minutes. Here you can also see that the paint scrapes off the joints. This is just something that happens. Using chalk pastels, I start blushing the body. This helps the doll look more alive. And the same goes for the head, while also giving it some more dimension. Starting to lay down the first layer of color through the tips of the ears. After another layer of Mr. Super Clear, I go over it again to darken it. And also start mapping out where her eyebrows are going to be with pastel, shaping them with the needed eraser. Adding some more blush to the cheeks, nose and forehead. Starting to sketch her eye shape with a light brown watercolor pencil. This way it's easier to correct any mistakes. Darkening the shadows of her smile and nose. And start building up those highlights, such as the inner eye corner, under the eyebrows and the cupid's bow. For her eyeshadow, I decided a shimmering dark brown color would suit her. I used an eyeshadow palette I already owned for this. I picked up any stray pigment with my needed eraser. After another layer of Mr. Super Clear, I added the shimmering cream eyeshadow to the inner corners of her eye and darkened up the eyebrows. I decided to give her freckles to mirror my butterfly-shaped face rash. And again building up those highlights. And finally, with a black watercolor pencil, darkening the lash line and hatching in the lower lashes and the eyebrows. drawing on her scars again with a watercolor pencil, mirroring my own with a heap of artistic interpretation. I first sketched up the tattoo with a light brown watercolor pencil, before I went over it with a red one. This tattoo has stuck around since some of her first designs from 2014-2015. The tattoo itself is inspired by prehistoric cave paintings. For the second layer, I simply lifted the pigment off the watercolor pencil with a wet paintbrush. Her second tattoo is inspired by Celtic and Old Scandinavian knotwork. Added some cut up false eyelashes to her eyes. And it's time to undo her hair wrap. I used pliers to remove the pins, since they got kinda stuck due to the layers of sealant. I made the eye blanks out of polymer clay, which I baked and sanded, painted the iris with a corresponding color using nail polish, and dotted in the pupil with a black acrylic. I topped it first with liquid polymer clay, then a nail polish top coat to make them look shiny. To curl the hair, I wrapped sections of hair around plastic straws, pinned them in place, then dunked them first in boiling water. and then setting the curls in cold water. Once the hair has dried, simply remove the straws and pins. And off into the baggie they go, until the next time I need them. Starting with the blouse, I trace out the pieces with tailor's pencil on white cotton before cutting out the pieces. I glue the edges of the pieces with wood glue to stop them from fraying, and once they are dry, I clean up the edges. Starting off with sewing the darts and sleeves. Then the wrong side of the cuff. Folding the cuff over to the right side and stitching it down. And sewing the side seams together. I also added a collar and a couple of snaps to the back. Next up is her pinafore. The bodice pattern is the same as the blouse, except the neckline is a bit lower. I trace out the bodice 2 times with tailor's chalk before cutting them out. The skirt part is made out of a very long rectangle that I first hemmed. Then added a bit of delicate lace trim to the bottom edge. Back to the bodice. First sew the darts together. Then sew the two layers together by the neck lining. Top stitching the armholes together. Seam the side seams together and hem the back closure. And gather and stitch the skirt to the bodice. I also made her two small bracelets using fishing wire and small purple and clear beads. A tail was also made for her, using some scrap fake fur, polyfill and wire. For the lacing of the pinafore, I used this cotton embroidery thread. I added the needle to both ends of the thread and laced it up like a normal bodice, just minus the eyelets, making this V-like pattern. I decided to make a petticoat to add an extra layer, so I cut out a rectangle the same length as a leftover piece of lace and glued the edges. Sew the lace to the rectangle. Then gathered it to a ribbon, acting as a waistband, and added the snap for the closure. Next up is her little cape for those midnight walks. I flipped through the pattern book to decide what kind I would make her. I decided on a cape made from pieces, since I'm going to make her cape from scraps of leftover fabric. I traced out the pattern pieces onto the wool with tailor's chalk before cutting them out. Seaming the pieces together, after it's all sewn together, I press all of the small seams. Then I made the lining out of crushed purple velvet. Sewing the two layers together, having the wrong sides face each other. After flipping the right side out, I top stitched the sides and the bottom edge together. I added another snap for the closure and added a decorative black button with a cute flower motif on top. This I stitched in place by hand. And that's the final piece finished.